What has 3 years of getting punched in the face done to my brain? So let's add some context. To compete in a mixed martial arts organization, which is safe MMA regulated, you need a battery of medical tests. Eye tests to make sure you're not full Bisbing, blood tests to make sure no one's going to catch anything crazy off you if they slash you with an elbow, general physicals, and MRI. So, MRI, I've had 3 in my life. One before my first Cage Warriors fight against Midas Forminas. The second one was when I returned to Cage Warriors before my fight with Dean Truman. And the third was most recently in February with the title fight I was going to have on March 30th before I got a broken jaw. I'm going to talk about the comparison between the one in June 2021 before my fight with Dean Truman and the one this year, February 2024, before my now cancelled title defense against Lucas Clay. So what are they looking for in these MRI assessments? Well, they're looking for different things. Things I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of, but things like monoyomas, microhemorrhage, things that put you at a great risk, underlying conditions that put you at a great risk of severe brain injury were you to take a head impact. And they're also looking at longitudinal effects, the comparison between scans. Is there any concerning changes within the brain from one scan to another? So we're comparing June 2021 to February 2024. What's happened within that time? I've had 7 fights, 6 wins, 1 loss. Only 2 of those fights have I taken any really big shots. When I won the title against Kyle Driscoll, I took quite a lot of shots in that fight. And when I lost in Contender Series against Abdul Karim El Salwadi, I took quite a few big shots in that fight. But I've never been dropped in that time. I've never been concussed, never been dropped or concussed ever. But I've done an insane amount of sparring, lots of different rounds with lots of different people. I would say a lot of the biggest shots I've taken are in sparring and surprisingly in grappling. Sometimes when you're grappling in the gym, there's throws, there's sweeps. Sometimes your hands are tied up. You don't have the base, your base on your head, and you actually take quite a big knock. Some of the biggest knocks and stingers I've had have been in these grappling exchanges, or you're both shooting for a takedown and you clash heads. But I've done a crazy amount of rounds. There's a lot of time where I've set at least 3 months, no rounds after this fight, and I've gotten carried away and I thought, well, I'll just do technical rounds. And even though I am doing technical rounds, I'll end up doing 10 of them. I'll end up doing a crazy amount of rounds because I tend to get a lot of volume out of camp and then up the intensity in camp. I have had a lot of volume in this time, a lot of volume of spars, and quite a few fights, a few fight camps for fights that didn't materialize. When I was first going to fight for the Cage Warriors title, it was against Mehdi Ben Lakhdar, and there was some nonsense Cockerina positive test. He looked perfectly fine, but these tests were crazy. These tests were crazy, invalid, and unreliable. So what did the MRI find? The MRI in February 2024 compared to the MRI of June 2021. Well, first of all, good news, no parenchymal volume loss. What does parenchymal mean, or parenchyma? It basically means pertaining to the functional tissue of an organ, which means I've lost no volume in my brain. Now, of course, there's caveats to this. People don't truly know if people have brain damage until they examine it post-mortem. This is what you find with a lot of American football players, a lot of rugby players. But whilst I'm living, MRI is the best bet. But it finds no parenchymal volume loss. Brilliant news. No microhemorrhage either, which is also brilliant news. But the major thing they're looking at with me in particular is what's called a cavum septum pellucidum. Now, cavum septum pellucidum just occurs in roughly just a bit under 15% of the population. It is a small gap in the brain, about 1 millimeter, about 1.5 millimeters. It's there when you're fetal, but it tends to fuse in the first 3 to 6 months of infancy. But for about 15% of the population, it doesn't, and it doesn't really lead to any ill effects. But they find it's increased in people who take part in contact sports like boxing or rugby, particularly people who take part in boxing and rugby in the formative years when they're growing up. So that would probably include me because I was sparring hard, sparring a lot of Muay Thai, sparring Muay Thai with adults and getting into scraps and not having brilliant head movement at the age of 12. What are they looking for in the scans pertaining to the cavum septum pellucidum? Well, if it's stable from one scan to the next over the years, chances are it's just part of the morphology, it's just part of the neurology of your brain. It's just there and it's not going to have any ill effects. But if it's growing in size from one scan to the next, chances are this is due to the head impact. More head impacts are causing a greater increase in the size of the gap of this cavum septum pellucidum, and this will cause neurocognitive issues and memory issues and possibly to Alzheimer's and all these other things later in life. So what did I find with my cavum septum pellucidum? Funny story about this cavum septum pellucidum, because safe MMA in Ireland is so much more strict. When I had my fight in Ireland, my Bellator fight against Richard Keeley, I had to get an extra neurologist exam to take part in this fight. Functionally, this exam was such a waste of time. He just asked me, what are these 5 words? Remember these 5 words: elbow, carpet, apple, saddle, bubble. And then I bumped into someone else who did a similar neurology exam for some other line of work, and I told him those words, and he's like, those are the exact same words that I got. So if you're getting a neurologist exam, however mashed your brain is, you can hack it just by remembering these 5 words: elbow, carpet, apple, saddle, bubble. Remember those 5 words: elbow, orangutan, cosm, doses, mimosas. Remember those 5 words. What were they again? Nobody knows. But he asked me these questions. He asked me, are you tired? Are you fatigued? And I went, yeah. And he looks all concerned, putting that in a note. I'm like, well, I woke up at 5 so I could do hill sprints because I had to drive all the way across the country to get this neurologist exam. That's why I'm tired. It's not because my brain's mush. Every answer I gave to every question, you kind of looked like this. I'm like doubting myself and everything. He asked me to cross my feet and close my eyes and do a load of questionnaires. But that's beside the point. Penny exam that was as well, wasn't it? But that's beside the point. What did they find with my cavum septum pellucidum? Thankfully, they have found it's stable. No increases in size. So this could very well just be something I've had since birth. Maybe it didn't fuse in infancy, and it's just something there that's not to worry about. Even though I've got these really positive findings from this MRI, in this comparison MRI comparing June 2021 and February 2024, even though there's been a lot of head impacts in that time, a lot of fight camps in that time, some really hard fights. You know, I've never got concussed, but there's been a lot of subconcussive impact. I'm not going to just use this as an example, as a guide to go, well, that's all right. I'm going to go full Sean Strickland. I'm still planning to be more intelligent with my sparring practices in future. I've been watching legend Jim Miller. He's 40 years old. He's fought everyone in the UFC, and he's still putting on some of the most banging performances, and that's what I want. I want career longevity. I want to be intelligent with it. I want to be like UFC 300 boy Umbasa Bless, that he gets another finish. Jim Miller, what a legend. That's just me spaffing over Jim Miller. So conclusions, yeah, avoid getting hit in the head. Generally, studies that look at sparring and head impact sports, or contact sports with head impact, like rugby, like boxing, this, that, and the other, find that increased sparring, increased head impact, heading a football, I tend to use as a guide if I'm technical sparring, is an impact less than heading a football. I don't really play football much, but whenever I head a football, I realize how hard an impact that is. I'll taste blood and cement and whatever in the back of my throat because someone's whipped in across and I've just 50p headed it. But I'll try to use that as a guide, less than that in a technical spar, even if that, you know, sometimes you're just showing and pulling the shots. I'm going to be smart with my sparring volumes in future because I don't want to get any injuries that put me out of a fight. It's a waste of time getting an injury like this jaw injury and not getting paid a penny for it. But it's all positive according to this MRI scan, according to this comparison of MRIs. But I'm not going to use that as a way to go full Sean Strickland. I'm still going to be smarter with it. If you like the videos and you want to support, keep it to your fucking self, will you?